Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So on Saturday night, Friedman dropped some absolute bombs on Hockey Night in Canada, in particular about two players where he talked about Sean Monahan potentially heading to the New York Rangers, and out of nowhere, Chris Tanev maybe heading to the Ottawa Senators. And yes, we are only about a month away from the trade deadline, so these deals might end up being pretty imminent. So I wanted to break down both of these potential moves, where I see they're coming from in terms of adding these guys, where I maybe have some concerns, and what maybe the price tag would look like for these guys. So without further ado, let's get into it. Up first is Sean Monahan, obviously having a massive bounce back year after being pretty down in Calgary. Had a good first season in Montreal. Now is absolutely balling out with 35 points in 49 games. So obviously Sean Monahan, going back to this, let me leave this on, only making $1.985 million this year. So half retained, he's basically making $1 million. So he's a very attractive option right now. And when looking at the New York Rangers, who Friedman obviously tied him to, it makes a lot of sense when looking at position-wise. Monahan's obviously a center. Who did the Rangers just unfortunately lose for the rest of the season? 2 concussions. Philip Hedl, so sliding him in. Hedl's making, I believe, $4.4 million on LTIR now. So they have a lot of money to work with. So when looking at a Sean Monahan to be their third line center, I definitely get where they're coming from, having interest in Sean Monahan. My problem with Sean Monahan is he's kind of relying on the power play when looking at him this season. Right now, he has 16 points on the power play, good for 46th in the entire NHL. Very, very impressive, but only 17 even strength points in the NHL, which is all the way down to tied for 204th. So when looking at this Rangers team, what has been a massive criticism over the past 3 years, their power play merchants, their 5-on-5 offense isn't that impressive. So when looking at a guy like Monahan, again, showing these Rangers numbers, goals for, 22nd, power play percentage, 4th in the entire league. When looking at it in terms of a fit, Sean Monahan is maybe not that style of player that they want to bring in at this year's deadline. You saw them do it last year with Patrick Kane and Tarasenko. Both guys at this stage in their career are pretty power play reliant. I wouldn't hate the move, but I do think for the New York Rangers, guys like a Elias Lindholm or an Adam Henrique, more well-rounded guys, do make a lot more sense for the New York Rangers. Yes, those guys would be more expensive. If we didn't have the Hedl injury to deal with and that LTIR money, I would 1,000% understand going after Sean Monahan instead, considering he's only going to cost you $1 million. But when looking at Henrique making 5.5, I think, about half retained, you get that well within the Hedl money. You don't even need it half retained. Lindholm's making 4.8. That's basically the Hedl money. So when looking at that, I would opt for maybe the more expensive player in terms of cap hit, not really price, the more expensive player that is more of a stylistic fit for the New York Rangers, then say maybe the shiny toy in a Sean Monahan, who is absolutely killing on the power play, having a great season, definitely, but I do have some major concerns about that. What it would cost to get Sean Monahan, I think the price is probably a first-round pick when looking at it, especially with that cap implications. Some teams that are going to be maybe cap tight at this year's deadline, not the New York Rangers, I think are going to be willing to give up a first-round pick, because even if he is maybe a power play merchant, that kind of production for only $1 million is going to be very valuable. So if the New York Rangers, do you kind of blow your load with that first-round pick on a guy that's probably not going to be in your top 6, probably going to be your third-line center, not going to be on your first power play unit? I don't really love it for the New York Rangers. I think if there's no other moves, if Lindholm and Henrique get traded soon, then yes, definitely go after a Sean Monahan. But I would be in on those guys first compared to a Sean Monahan when looking in terms of stylistic fits for the New York Rangers. So overall, if they give up a first-round pick, I'm not going to murder them for them. Sean Monahan is still a very good player, and I don't think his even strength production is going to be this bad going forward. I think it's going to somewhat balance out, but he definitely is more of a power play guy compared to more two-way guys that are available at this year's deadline. The other one that kind of shocked us was Chris Tanev potentially could be heading to the Ottawa Senators. This is from Audie, our good friend Audie. On Saturday headlines, Friedman said the Senators are looking for pros and that Chris Tanev is on their radar. Obviously, this kind of threw me for a loop because obviously the Senators are dog shit right now. You wouldn't really think that they're going to buy at this year's deadline. If they end up trading for Chris Tanev, I would assume that a signing trade would be in line. I don't think they're going to give up assets that like maybe walk him to free agency. I think that would obviously be ridiculous. My hair's all over the place. But when looking at Chris Tanev in the Ottawa Senators, it is definitely interesting what it would cost. Maybe that Boston first round pick if the Calgary Flames are getting a bunch of other offers from teams. More likely the Ottawa Senators second round pick this year. I believe they do have their second round pick, which is going to be like top 37. So it basically is like a late first round pick when looking at him compared to other guys like Brett Kulak got a second round pick. David Savard got a first round pick 2 to 3 years ago from Tampa Bay. So I think it's going to be a late first. They're obviously not going to give up their own first round pick for Chris Tanev, but obviously from that DeBrincat trade, they have that first round pick that's probably going to be Boston's. It's between Detroit and Boston's, but Detroit would have to make the Stanley Eastern Conference Finals in order for that to become Detroit's at 28th overall or whatnot. So in looking at this, I do definitely have my concerns when it comes to Chris Tanev. He is having a bit of a down year. Calgary Flames aren't that good. He's still one of the best defensemen in the entire league. There's absolutely no debating that when it comes to Chris Tanev. The thing that does scare me is he just turned 34 years old. When looking at the Ottawa Senators, are you going to lock him up to this 4-year, $4.5, maybe even $5 million deal? I'm not sure what that contract would look like. And it would be scary considering he is getting up there in age. If you think that he has 3 to 4 years left, maybe go for it. But if he only has 1 to 2 years, like the age curve suggests most of the time, I'm not sure the Ottawa Senators are in the position like that they currently are to be making win-win-win now moves, and especially punting on a potential top 40 pick, whether it's Boston's first or their own second round pick. Yes, it would make sense in the sense of, you don't really, maybe you move off Jacob Chychrun if you get a Chris Tanev, because Chychrun right now is playing on the right side. Yes, Shabbat and Chychrun probably long-term. You're not going to be having Sanderson, Shabbat, and Chychrun all making $8 million going forward, assuming Chychrun would get that on extension. So maybe if you move off Chychrun, bring in Tanev, you have more of a balanced defensive pairing. You have Zub, Sanderson, Shabbat. Tanev, that could maybe work stylistically in terms of players playing to their strengths, but obviously Jacob Chychrun's much better than Chris Tanev. So from a terms of balance standpoint, it would make sense. Obviously, they would trade Chychrun if they end up trading for Tanev, but I can't say I absolutely love it considering this team is not competitive at all right now. If I were them, I'd probably keep all my picks and then go after a guy in free agency. I'm not, maybe try to sign Chris Tanev in free agency because obviously he's going to be an unrestricted free agent. But when looking at it, are you going to give up a second round pick instead of maybe just sign someone to a 3-year, $3.54 million deal in free agency? That's what I would personally do if I'm the Ottawa Senators. I'm reevaluating on the whole. I'm not digging down and making win now moves like a Chris Tanev trade. Do it in offseason. Do it in unrestricted free agency where you don't have to give up any assets. So overall, with these two moves, I don't really love them for either team. I think for the Rangers, it would be a good move, assuming other options are exhausted. And for the Senators, I don't hate it, but the age and what contract they would maybe give Chris Tanev definitely scares me. But let me know in the comments, what do you think about these two moves? I assume the Monahan news, like they were going to be in on Monahan. The Tanev news honestly shocked me. So with all that said, let me know in the comments, what do you think? And I'll be seeing the next one.